In a world of wealth and power, sometimes the smallest gestures reveal the largest truths. The ballroom was dazzling that evening, chandeliers glowing like 1,000 suns, polished marble. The mansion loomed in silence, a sprawling estate on the edge of the city, where fountains whispered under moonlight and glass chandeliers glimmered like frozen stars. The kind of house people only saw in magazines or in their wildest dreams. Inside sat Jonathan Price, a billionaire, a man who had built his fortune from the ground up, but along the way had built walls just as high around his heart. To the world, he was sharp, untouchable, and merciless in business. But tonight, his mind wasn't on contracts or stock markets. Tonight, it was on something different. You see, Jonathan had a habit. He tested people, from boardroom executives to gardeners, from assistants to housekeepers. Jonathan believed that true character revealed itself in the moments when no one was watching, or when people thought no one was watching. And on this evening, his curiosity had been stirred by the newest member of his household staff, a maid named Marissa. Marissa was different, quiet, efficient, dignified. She didn't gossip with the other staff. She didn't rush. She moved with a kind of grace, as though every corner she dusted, every dish she washed mattered. And she had something else with her, or rather, someone else. A daughter. A girl no older than 10, with wide, thoughtful eyes and a quiet presence. She never interrupted, she never played loudly. She simply sat with a small notebook, scribbling sketches while her mother worked. Some staff whispered about it. Why bring a child into a mansion like this? But Marissa had explained. Childcare was expensive, and leaving her daughter alone in their neighborhood wasn't safe. So she asked permission, and to Jonathan's surprise, he had given it. But something about that little girl lingered in his mind. So Jonathan devised a test. He would pretend to sleep and see what happened. That evening, after dinner, Jonathan reclined in his favorite leather chaise by the fireplace. A brandy glass rested on the side table, the golden liquid catching firelight. He leaned back, exhaled slowly, and let his eyes drift shut, though every sense was sharp, awake, waiting. He listened to the faint clinking of silverware as Marissa polished in the dining room. He caught the soft scratch of a pencil as the little girl sketched in her notebook. Then, silence. Footsteps. Light ones. The kind of steps a child makes when curiosity wins over caution. Jonathan steadied his breathing, letting it slow, deep, even, the practiced rhythm of a man pretending to sleep. The footsteps came closer. He felt the shift of air as someone stood over him. Then, the faint tug of fabric. Jonathan almost opened his eyes, almost, but he forced himself to stay still. The little girl had picked up the throw blanket that had slipped from his chair. With careful fingers, she draped it over him, smoothing it across his chest. And then a whisper. So faint, he almost thought he imagined it. Mom says, even rich men need kindness too. Jonathan's chest tightened. He had expected mischief, a child rifling through his pockets, a curious hand reaching for his expensive watch, something selfish. But instead, he found tenderness, compassion, a lesson he hadn't been taught in decades. And for the first time in years, Jonathan felt something crack in the icy armor he wore around his heart. But this was only the beginning. Because what Jonathan Pryce didn't know was that this little girl would go on to reveal secrets about loyalty, trust, and love that would shake his empire to its very foundation. The next evening, Jonathan tried again. He told himself it was nothing more than curiosity, nothing more than observation. But deep down, there was something stirring inside him that he could not explain. Something fragile, something he hadn't allowed himself to feel in years. That little girl's whisper, "Even rich men need kindness too," kept echoing in his mind like a bell that refused to stop ringing. So, once again, he settled into his chair, brandy on the table, blanket accidentally slipping to the floor, eyes closing, breath slowing, waiting. At first, he heard nothing, just the distant hum of Marissa working in the kitchen, the quiet tick of the grandfather clock in the hall. Then the footsteps, light, hesitant. She was back. Jonathan stilled his body, though his heart beat a little bit faster this time. He could almost see her through his closed eyes, the way children think no one notices them even as they study every detail. He felt her pause beside him. Then, not the blanket, a hand. Small fingers brushed against his wrist, then curled around his hand. Not tugging, not greedy, just holding. For a moment, Jonathan thought she was simply curious about his watch, but no, her grip tightened, as though she were steadying him. And then she whispered again, "Don't worry, I'll protect you." Jonathan nearly broke the act. His eyes almost flew open. Protect him? This was a billionaire sitting in a fortress-like mansion guarded by gates, cameras, and armed staff. The most powerful men in the city trembled when he walked into a room. And yet here was a child, a maid's daughter, with nothing but innocence in her heart, telling him she would keep him safe. He swallowed hard. His throat burned. And for the first time in years, he felt an ache he couldn't hide. The ache of loneliness. Later that night, when the house was empty and silent, Jonathan sat alone in his study, staring at the dying embers in the fireplace. His mind replayed those words. "Don't worry, I'll protect you." The billionaire who trusted no one, who measured men by contracts and deals, who thought loyalty was just another word for leverage, was shaken by the honesty of a child. But Jonathan wasn't ready to admit it. Not yet. He told himself it was just a child's imagination, just empty words. And yet something inside him wanted to believe them, needed to believe them. So, the next day, Jonathan raised the stakes. He instructed the staff to leave the girl alone in the drawing room with him for a few minutes. He dozed off again, this time dropping an envelope stuffed with $100 bills halfway out of his jacket pocket. A clear temptation, a trap, carefully set. And then he waited. The girl saw it. Jonathan felt her freeze in place. He could almost hear her little gasp at the sight of so much money, more than she and her mother probably made in months. There was a pause, a long one. Jonathan thought, this is it. This is where the truth comes out. He braced himself for the soft tug of paper, for the rustle of bills being stolen. But instead, the girl gently pushed the envelope back into his pocket. And then she did something Jonathan never expected. She sat down beside his chair and opened her sketchbook. Her pencil began to move, quick strokes, careful lines. Minutes passed. Jonathan almost broke his cover just to see what she was doing. But he forced himself to wait, still breathing steady, still feigning sleep. Finally, she whispered again. "You look lonely, mister, but don't worry. I'll draw you a friend."
Jonathan's chest tightened. He had prepared himself for greed, for dishonesty, for the ugly truth he always believed about people. But instead, she gave him kindness, innocence, something money could never buy. And that night, when Jonathan finally opened his eyes after she left, he found the sketchbook lying open on the table. On the page was a drawing of himself sitting in the same chair, but beside him, she had drawn another figure, a smiling man, a friend. And for the first time in decades, Jonathan Pryce felt tears sting his eyes. Jonathan barely slept that night. He kept staring at that little drawing, the one the girl had left in his study, his own face drawn with surprising care for a child, and beside him that smiling friend she had given him on paper, a gift from innocence, a reminder of everything he had lost. He had tested her twice now, first with the blanket,